Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X-Men number 47, cover dated December 1995. This is part 2 of a two-part storyline featuring the X-Babies, and this particular part of the story, the second chapter, is set in Little Italy, New York, which is pretty cool, and we'll see Andy Kubert have some fun drawing Little Italy in the interior pages of the comic. The cover itself is really well designed. It's really eye-catching. I like the tilted Dutch angle here, and Bishop trying to prevent Magog getting at the X-Babies here. Great expressions on their faces. And we also have a credit here for the digital colorist as well. This particular era of comics where digital coloring had become prominent, you do get the colorist signing their name to the digital coloring art on covers, something that you never saw in the 70s or 80s, colorists getting any credit for the covers of the comics. And just one little detail that I don't know why it stood out to me, but it's a little bit odd that this particular colorist, Arno, he takes some time over giving a different color to Bishop's nipple there. That's a little bit weird. But in terms of the drawing itself, really well done by Andy Kubert. Does a great job on Magog in particular, and I like these broken fingernails that he's given him as well. Just that little bit of detail, and all of the acting there by the X-Babies as well. Really nice stuff. So let's open this one up to the splash page. That's a great splash page too, featuring the X-Babies in flight. Cyclops there, the leader, telling them all his strategy is simple. They've got to run. So Cyclops has a lisp in this. If I read out any of his dialogue, I won't be reproducing that lisp. But I like Rogue here, what the little dialogue given to her. Run, really? That's how you get to be leader? By coming up with run? And she's got her little pigtails there as well. So it's a pretty amusing splash page. I like the little detail of the cab driver there as well, looking out angrily from his side window, and Bishop walking on his head as well. Baby Bishop, ex-baby Bishop. Yeah, that's a really nice splash page. So, and what's coming up is even nicer. Like, this is the coming up next is the best art in the book. An amazing double page spread. So get ready for this. Look at that. That is stunning stuff by Andy Kubert and Cam Smith. And the digital colorist is Kevin Summers. That's beautiful work there. Really, really nice. So we'll learn later in the issue that the particular festival here, religious festival in Little Italy, is the Feast of San Gennaro, which happens in mid to late September every year. And San Gennaro is the patron saint of Naples. I've actually been to the church, the basilica, where his body is entombed in Naples. It's a very important church and sanctuary in the city. So obviously that Neapolitan community that emigrated from Italy to New York brought their religious festivals and traditions with them. And this is what you get to see here. And of course, you've seen things like this in The Godfather, most particularly Godfather Part 3, which came out around, if my memory serves me, around 1990, if I'm not wrong about that. So I kind of have a feeling that Lobdell must have watched that before he wrote this particular issue. So the creative team here is Scott Lobdell, writer, Andy Kubert, penciler, Cam Smith, and Jesse Delperdang, inkers. So the first few pages are definitely inked by Cam Smith. For sure. And I was thinking about this, you know, whenever you get a couple of inkers on a book, it's an indication that the comic is under deadline pressure, trying to get those pages finished and off to the printers. And also I was thinking Cam Smith, if I'm not mistaken, is an English artist, and maybe there was some delays creeping in to the work in terms of trying to get pages over to England and then back over the Atlantic. In the era before digital inking came into effect, and also digital files for scanned and inked pages. So yeah, a great double page spread with the icon of the saint there. And yeah, and I like even the continuity from the splash page of the cab drivers back there screeching to a halt in front of the X-Babies. And just the expressions on their faces, so well done. Their look of amazement as they happen upon this particular parade in Little Italy. And I like the detail too of the Empire State Building there in the background. Yeah, I really love this page. This is a great, great page. So Cyclops says, Stay close. I don't want to be separated until we know what happened to Storm and Iceman. They're in a bookshop with adult Iceman and Jean Grey. Relax, gang, he says. As leader, I'll panic for everyone. So a little vein of humour running through this particular issue. And let's see here, we have a priest who comes up to the kids and says to them, I'm Father Anthony, can I be of some service? So Cyclops starts explaining, well, see, we were in one dimension where Mojo used to rule, now we're in this one. And of course, Mojo was deposed in Adjectiveless X-Men, this very title, issues 10 and 11, Jim Lee's last creative contribution to the X-mythos before moving on to co-found Image. And I like this expression on Baby Archangel's face here, where he says, because we were attacked by two really ugly monster guys, this ugly, that's funny, that is. And Rogue here saying, we was hoping to be rescued by Gambit and Bishop, the big ones, but they kind of got their heads handed to them. And Baby Gambit says you. So the priest here thinks that they're play acting. He says, this all sounds very exciting, but maybe you should get back to your parents. Now, why don't you give me their phone numbers? And I'll give them, and he was about to say a call, but then the whole group is covered over by this massive silhouette. Just want to pick out the little detail here of the Italian-American stereotypes that Andy Kubert has drawn in there in the background as well, and here too. And then suddenly the priest is wearing some glasses there as well that he wasn't wearing before that. A little continuity error in the art, but who is this that is arriving on the scene? Well, it's Gog and his son Magog, and they wrecked that cab. So that cab driver's having a bad day, and they're huge. Look at the size of them compared to the X-Babies as well. So they're there to terminate the X-Babies. And Magog says, it was fun dropping a building on Bishop and Gambit, Dad, but still. So the X-Babies run, everybody's running. And what happens is our scene switches back to Soho, South Houston. So that's where the pair were in the previous issue. They were in an after-hours club. I thought it was an illegal gambling club, but apparently just an after-hours club. And so the building was wrecked by Gog and Magog. We didn't get to see that at the end of the previous issue. They just showed up, and that was the cliffhanger. And it turns out that there was time enough to get all the patrons alive out of the club. And Gambit just basically doesn't care about the property destruction. He says they were insured, probably. But thanks for using your bioblast to get us out from under that mess. And Bishop says you're welcome. But it was your ability to kinetically charge and explode objects that created space for us as the building originally collapsed. So that's kind of funny. You know, we're getting a little explanation if you're a first-time reader in terms of what Gambit and Bishop's powers are, but also it explains, you know, how they survived the collapse of the building on them. And then Gambit says here, I like this. This is an interesting little choice here to have this panel bleeding off the page by Kubert in this tight close-up on Gambit's eye and the bridge of his nose. Admit it, mon ami, he says, we actually make a pretty good team when we ain't trying to kill each other, because these two are the odd couple, of course, with Bishop's suspicions about Gambit being responsible for the death of the X-Men and the betrayal and the death of the X-Men. This is an interesting little snippet of the time period when comics was so popular and when everybody was trying to get like their property optioned as an animated series, but also late 1995, the speculator bubble has burst and comics sales are actually going to go down to the point that Marvel will go bankrupt. They'll file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in a couple of years' time. So the height of comics popularity has just come to an end, but the X titles are still selling really well. So there's a little bit of dialogue here between Bishop and Gambit precisely about does Bishop trust Gambit, and Bishop still says that he believes that Gambit himself believes that he wouldn't ever betray the X-Men. We have this little silent panel here. Gambit says this talk is far from over, mon ami. So Gambit trying to win Bishop's trust, but remember Bishop is quite discombobulated at this point in X continuity from the time he spent in the Age of Apocalypse. He's one of those people that experienced the Age of Apocalypse and came back into the prime reality and has kind of a trauma, like a psychic trauma from the 20 years he spent in the Age of Apocalypse. And he's trying to get to grips with that, and that's also why he's cut his hair in part. So then we're at the bookshop in Midtown Manhattan, where Jean was trying to buy a gift for her nephew and niece, a birthday gift, and then they were interrupted by the X-Babies, Baby Storm and Baby Iceman. Great body language here that Kubert has drawn for the pair, very funny stuff. And also Jean is using her psionic powers to mask the presence of the X-Babies and themselves from the rest of the customers in the bookshop, so they're just looking about their business without any regard to what's going on here. And the two little X-Babies are fighting with each other, but are they going to get to the point of why they searched out Jean and Iceman? And also, how on earth did they know that they were in that bookshop? That's not right. We never learned that information. But in any case, they get to the point. Why are they there? What do they want from Iceman and Jean Grey? And this is a funny panel here, and it reminds me of that cat from the Shrek movies. So the look on their faces. So Baby Iceman says, Gog and Magog want to kill us. And this is really funny. Baby Storm says, please, Iceman and Phoenix, we don't want to be killed. I don't know, that just makes me laugh. That's funny, that is. And also look at the digital effect here, blurring out Iceman's hands in the foreground, so our eyes go straight to the X-Babies. I pointed that out in the previous issue as well. We had that little trick used in the previous issue. A few times too often for me in the previous issue, but I think once in this issue is fine. So Iceman here says, you can't be killed because you're not real, because they're animated, yes? But this is interesting from Jean. She's using her telepathy and she's scanning them and she finds psionic imprints from them. They may have started out as artificial life forms, but now they're very, very real. And then they go back to their fighting again. So that kind of changes the game in terms of the X-Babies and the fact that the X-Men are going to have to defend them against Gog and Magog. Another little kind of memory blast here with Mole Rats coming out in 1995, 1996. It's an okay movie. At the time it was interesting because you got to see Stan Lee in the film and there was lots of references to comics culture, but I don't know, it was a bit crude as well in many ways, and I don't think that film has aged well. Let me know what your opinion is about it, if it differs from mine. So the other side of town, this reminded me of a scene from Gremlins, the first Gremlins film from 1984. So we've got the X-Babies hiding here amongst all these stuffed toys, and Gog and Magog are searching for them. They're tearing up Little Italy, searching for them, and all of the like festival, what would I say, like festival elements such as this. It's like some kind of what's that, merry-go-round for kids that Gog here has upturned looking for the X-Baby, so they're ripping the place up. And then finally we get the arrival of Gambit and Bishop. So this is a really cool panel here, and obviously Kubert interested in drawing this church and its steeple here as well, because why would you do that unless you unless you wanted to? If you didn't have to, you wouldn't. But Kubert working it in, and it looks really well, and it adds again more specificity to the environment. So Gambit here says, so what you say, mes-amis? If you're done terrorizing the petite ones, everybody's favourite X-Men are ready for a rematch. So the X-Babies are delighted there. That's a nice little panel of them as well. I'd say Kubert enjoyed drawing this issue and enjoyed drawing the X-Babies. I get that feeling. So what we see here is a fight now between Gog and Magog and Bishop and Gambit. We didn't get to see that at the end of the previous issue, so we're getting to see it now. So Kubert like showing us some nice little action sequences here, but the size of Gog and Magog, they're getting the better of Gambit and Bishop. So the X-Babies are wondering if they're going to get involved too. Baby Cyclops says here, I mean, are we X-Men or are we X-Mice? Gambit here, Baby Gambit looking through his fingers, peeking out through his fingers, saying, well, technically we're X-Babies. So Magog says, how badly for you to have gotten involved, X-Man, because now the choice is no longer yours. Now all you can do is, and he was going to say die, but there is a save from the X-Babies. They get involved with these water pistols. Hey loser, says baby Bishop, don't mess with the X-Men, even the little ones, especially the little ones, says Gambit. And there we go. So that gives adult Gambit time to use his bow staff against Magog here. But Gog is still getting the better of Bishop. And he says, after I've removed Bishop's head from his shoulders, I'll help you out, son. So the X-Babies here still helping out the X-Men. But ultimately, they just lose against these huge, like Gog and Magog are massive. Our apologies, muddlings, says Gog. In our effort to enjoy our duty-bound absence from our home dimension, we've misled you. Simply stated, says Magog, we've more than enough power to obliterate you all, and it looks like it. I like the way that Kubert has made the group of Bishop and Gambit and the X-Babies so small in comparison to these immense brutes. So it really looks like they're in trouble here. But turn the page, and of course the cavalry arrives in the form of Jean and Iceman and Baby Storm and Baby Iceman. And so that's going to, it would appear, turn the tide of battle. You know, there's a little, I was a little bit confused when I was going through this issue originally before making this particular video. This seemed to me like a double page spread. It seemed that way until I tuned into it and realized they're two separate pages. There's something about the coloring that it just conveys the idea that it's a double page spread, but no, it isn't. But this is a pretty cool anchor image here of Gog saying to the X-Men, any debt of goodwill you engendered by ridding our people of Mojo and his madness, and again that goes back to issues 10 and 11 of the title, does not excuse your interference in our affairs. So here they are, they've got the X-Babies, Magog grabs them, he's about to eat them, and he says, they are not and never were children. So they're saying this is going to hurt. I like the little humorous detail of Archangel, baby Archangel, holding his nose as he's about to go down Magog's throat, and then somebody calls out stop. So who could that be? Well, let's turn the page. And this really is, when you think about it, it makes sense who this turns out to be, but also it's a surprise as well. It's a surprise ending. But we are calling back, we have been calling back to X-Men issues 10 and 11. And so who is it that we haven't seen since those issues? Well, it's Alison Blair, it's Dazzler. And again, we get a nice shot there of Little Italy again. And this is really cool body language that Kubert has given Magog and Gog here, where they're kind of kneeling in obeisance or hunching down in obeisance to Alison Blair. And Magog addresses her as your most high and magnanimous majesty and refers to himself and his father as humble servants. And she says, I didn't follow you here to watch you kneel. I'm here because once I heard you were dispatched, it was pretty obvious to me anyway that you two would overstep your boundaries in your zeal to quote-unquote collect the little ones. Judging from what's left of the local Feast of San Gennaro, I'd say my instincts were right. And Gog says, but we were ordered to. Save it for someone who cares. So who ordered them? That's left unclear. So she blinds them with her power here. That's a little unclear in the art. In the colouring, I mean. So that could have been clearer in the colouring that she is using her light power on them. And then Iceman and Jean twig who it is, that it is Alison Blair. Maybe this would have been better on a page turn to get to this scene. Now, of course, it's comics, so we have heroic proportions, but Ali looks particularly to have extremely long legs in this particular shot by Kubert. But I really like this the kind of like side profile, almost like 3/4 side profile there on Gog. That's really good. That's nicely done. Magog over here looking good too. And she says, look, I'm not going to tell you again. The name is Dazzler. You want to follow my husband? And look at the way it's in quotes. Long shot around and kneel and bow and curtsy fine. That's a career choice. So the implication only, is that Longshot sent them after the X-Babies. And she continues and says, but I'm not having any part of this new political structure that's been set up. Again, I'm here for the kids, period. Now back off. So it seems like that she is estranged from Longshot. And so Gog and Magog are obedient. By the light, she says, you two are dense. That's a weird exclamation. Let's say we discuss this all when we get home. So she conjures up a trans-dimensional portal, and in a flash of light from Alison Blair's fingertips, both Gog and Magog are gone. So we're at the end of the issue. What's to become of the X-Babies? They're worried. They're afraid of her. And Alison kind of comes down to their level. The proportions are weird here in terms of what is she doing there. We can see the back of baby Cyclops' leg there and foot. So what's happening here? What is her physical position? Is she hunkering down? Something's gone wrong there anyway. And she says, I died first. I know you're all old enough and bright enough to know there's no place for you in the entertainment-free new order of our world. So, Longshot was the entertainment, and is the implication that now that he's ruler of the world, the new political order that he's instituted in conjunction with Mojo 2, that there's no entertainment anymore? It's all a little bit unclear. And she continues and says, there are a lot of people that see you as a symbol of the old life under Mojo's rule. Until Longshot is officially elected as the new world leader, there will be a lot of opposing forces that would like to see you all destroyed. And she continues and says, the way I see it, there's no way I can stop those people from hurting you. Bishop is concerned about where it's going. Jean has faith in Ali. And she continues and says, unless you all agree to come live with me and Longshot in our home under our protection. All right. So, interesting that. So they're living together, but why did she use the expression husband in quotation marks? Why imply that she's not interested in the new political structure, that she's no interested in that, but she's talking about Longshot being elected new world leader, democratically, of course. Yeah, it's all a little bit unclear what's going on there. So they're off to the Palace Royale. And I like this little character bit here between Iceman and Gambit, where Iceman says to Gambit, he says, hey, you big old sentimental Cajun softy, is that a tear in your eye? And Gambit says, please, mon ami, what do you take me for? That's good. I like that. And then Iceman's about to put his foot in it. He says, no problem he calls her Al instead of Ali, but with all these mouths to feed, and then he's nudged by Jean. So then they hug, and then the Alison and the X-Babies transport to the Mojo's dimension. I like the little details here where you shift from this panel to this one and you see the expressions on their faces and the different things the X-Babies do. So you see this really happy Archangel here. Storm's expression doesn't change. Cyclops puts up that particular hand sign, like that. It's funny. Iceman looks worried there. Gambit gives a wave and Rogue gives a wave as well. I like that thoughtfulness from Kubert in the art. And then we get why did Jean nudge Iceman? And he asks her, and she says, because he says, I was just going to ask about how her baby is doing. And Jean says, that's just it, Bobby. I didn't sense another life within her. So that's another little mystery there. Has Alison lost the baby that she was said to have at the very end of X-Men 11? When there was that little joke at the end where Longshot said he was thinking about calling the baby Shatterstar. And she said, no way. So the baby seems to have been lost. Interesting. And again, does that factor into this kind of implication of an estrangement or a little distance between Alison and Longshot? Bishop anyway says, it seems obvious to me that she was distressed. If she's one of our own, maybe we owe it to her to bring her back to our world. So no mention of Longshot. And Jean says, what we owe her is the same thing we all want, Bishop to be free to find her own way. And Gambit says, sounds fair to me. And there you go. So that's in effect the end of the two-part X-Baby storyline. And it was fun in its way. The high point for me was the opening pages of this issue set in Little Italy. That was great. But one thing that was missing from all of this is what was part of the X-Baby concept in the beginning when Claremont co-created them with Art Adams, they were a way of satirizing mega entertainment corporations and their exploitation of intellectual property and creators. And there's just none of that subtext in this two-parter. Instead, we're just looking at the X-Babies as entertainment for these two issues. So that kind of satirical potential that is used by Claremont in the original iterations of the X-Babies is completely erased from this double part story. And I think that that's a shame. And I really do think that there is scope for bringing the X-Babies back. I was going to say X-Babbies, that's Hiberno English, back to 2024, 2025 Marvel. I think that there's real scope for satirization of megacore like Disney, Warner Brothers, etc. Those big entertainment corporations. Bring the X-Babies back, I say, for that very purpose. And then at the end, we just have a little link to Uncanny X-Men 328, where Professor X has made his decision regarding Sabretooth. So he calls Boomer in for a chat about that because she's been taking care of Sabretooth and has made a personal investment in his rehabilitation. And the professor's decided, well, no, that's over. Sabretooth is irredeemable. And you can see my review of Uncanny X-Men 328 on the channel already if you haven't seen it before. So here we've got some letters about X-Men 44, next issue, what's wrong with Bishop. I mentioned that earlier. So there's going to be an exploration of what he's dealing with in terms of the time he spent in the Age of Apocalypse, that he can't access those memories psychically, but they're having an impact on him and his mood. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Men number 47. Let me know your thoughts on the issue itself in the comments section to the video. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like the video on YouTube. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.